Here is Terragrunt. Well, if I'm talking about Terragrunt, I think it's good to have at least Terragrunt repository here so that you can understand what I'm talking about. So all kind of apply all, plan all, invalidate all, and destroy all commands are available, but the only command which actually makes sense is apply all, and I talked about that already. Then I covered some parts of Atlantis, and that's pretty much it. So today let's talk about patterns, and we'll talk about, so I will just move my windows here and share my browser. Cool. So when I'm going to talk about patterns, I will just go to this folder, Terragrunt reference architecture, and then I have Acme serverless, and this is where I worked or where I showed some code. I haven't done any changes to the code, so it should work the same way, and if it doesn't, then I will try to fix it in real time and see how it goes. So patterns. Patterns in structuring and in using Terragrunt configuration files are usually related to inclusion of different configuration files like TF-vars, and there are plenty of ways how you can do this. I'm not going to show all of them because they are actually in documentation already, and this documentation is really well, maybe not the best one, but it's the only place where you can find all information about different features of Terragrunt. So if I now go to this one, so here if I go to search read config read, yes, here is it. So there are several functions in addition to Terraform which you can use inside of your Terragrunt configuration files. Those functions which are related to inclusion of different files are like finding parent folders, which will go upward from your current location and include first file with the same name or with the name which is specified. And the one which is most relevant is read Terragrunt config. So what this does is that this one allows us to include file which is, let's say, find in parent folders, and first this command will find first file common HCL upwards from the current directory, and then it will read a configuration file from it. So it will actually expect to have inputs there, and then you can reference this by key. So local, common vars, because it's here, and inputs. So this way you can actually reuse your configuration quite extensively. Unfortunately, sometimes way too extensively. So I saw a lot of projects where people were extremely creative with this, which leads to very dry code, but the complexity was a little bit too much, to my opinion. So be a little bit careful when you do these kind of things. Make sure that you only include things as you need them or as you know them. Don't try to include everything and then override it in most places. That's not the most effective way. So read Terragrunt config is one way how you can achieve inheritance with that. Inside of Terragrunt HCL file, there is also instruction which is called required var file and optional var file. So what this does is that this block will make sure that when you are running Terragrunt with Terragrunt command where you can use variables like var and var files, then Terragrunt will append arguments to these files. So your Terraform command will look like when you write Terragrunt plan, it will actually run Terraform plan, and then it will add -var file, and it will make sure that it find in parent folder common TFRs file in this case. It can also include optional files. Optional means that if this file doesn't exist, it will not include it. But required will mean that if there is no file like this, it will fail. So that's a whole difference. Overall, this thing has been there for a very long time, and it's very well used by the community, and you have to use required and optional. But what I want to highlight here, one thing, is that when you see some configuration like this one, oops, I just did something, but okay. So when you see something like this and you see list here, and as I told a couple minutes ago, you can use all functions of Terraform, and you can do whatever you want here. So the first thing which comes to your mind, or at least it comes to my mind, is that if I see something similar like this, okay, I have few configuration files which I want to include, and I'm lazy to do this stuff. So the first thing which comes to my mind is that, what if we write for e in range 5? So you see, it is possible to do. Well, I don't know if this specific code is actually going to work, but is it easy to work with? Like, maybe this specific case is easier to work with, but do you really want to make your Terragrunt config to look like code? Probably not. I mean, if you want, go and use Pulume. But if you want to keep your Terragrunt configuration sane so that you understand what's going on, don't try to overload them with all of your knowledge of programming language. Really, it's not the best place to use. If you want to use programming language, you can do this, but in slightly different way and not in configuration file itself. So yes, we are really thankful, and that's really cool that we can write anything we want here. So if I want, inside of inputs, I can write any interpolation or any expression I want, and it will work as expected. That's really cool. But always think about this, whether you want it to be like monster, or do you want to understand what's going on. And anyway, when we have possibility to write something dynamic and reference values like this by dependency, it is way better than if we would be forced to use static Terraform TFRs files where we cannot use anything dynamic. Okay, so that was my kind of side note about including files. Okay, and last thing related to include files, be careful that when you have this include block works only one level. So you cannot include multiple times. It will just fail. So think about structuring your Terraform config files so that you will be including them only once. Next thing is related to modules. Well, the comment here is about modules. Now let me see where I have them. Okay, I think this is a good example here. Yeah, more or less. So what is actually the deal about modules? Here in Terraform block source, I can specify which module version which module I want, and I can optionally specify which version I want. Here I'm using master, but in most cases it's better to be very specific and specify which version you actually want. This is one way how you can source module. So you source it from remote repository. You can also write local path if this module exists locally. And this is an important thing how you work with Terragrunt, actually how you work with Terraform in general, is when you are using open source or any shared module, and you see that this module does what you want, but it's missing something. So what you usually do? Well, you go to GitHub repository, open issue, complain about it, and then hear back that it's intended to be like this. feel free to open pull request. Then you decide to open pull request. So you open pull request from your local fork into origin. So this is really the way how you do it. Once you open pull request to the origin, then pull request will be there for some time, maybe week, maybe day, maybe, well, you know how it is. And meanwhile, you have to use your own fork. So here you put another URL. So you put your username here, probably, and then you use this repository. That's like one way of doing it. Another way of using it is that you have your local modules inside of this organization, inside of this repository directly. The use case for such behavior is that there are two use cases. First use case is that this module is unlikely to leave your organization, so that's why there is no sense to share this AWS data module, which, well, in this case it is actually general, and maybe it's a good idea to share it to the wider internet, but you're too lazy to share it, to publish it anywhere, so you have it inside of this organization. And another use case is that you have this module because you are currently working on it. So the way how you do this is that you figure out, so let me open another part of this project where I'm actually using it, probably Acme Prod AWS data, where I'm actually referencing to the source code of this module as relative or as absolute path. So here I specify that I want to use this modules AWS data from this directory. And now every time when I do changes inside of AWS data folder, it will be automatically updated, and I don't have to do the whole cycle of commit, push, and merge, and so on. So there is simply no need to think about all that. So as I'm working on this module, or as I'm, let's say, designing or rewriting or refactoring, as I'm working with it in general, it's quite good to have this module locally, just to make it much faster. But then when I'm thinking that, okay, now it's quite solid and I need to share it, then I have to push this to remote repository, for example, and then I have to update this link here to use GitHub. So the flow here is that you work with something locally, you open pull request to a region, and then you externalize this module from your local infrastructure repository because you want to share it with someone or with some other team or with some other project. It doesn't matter. So normally you have very few modules which belongs to your organization specifically. I mean to this specific repository. They are often shared across multiple organizational units within one company or different projects. So think about this as a pattern of evolution in your module. So another thing is here how to actually extend Terragrunt with Terraform. Well, this is a little bit tricky to show, but let me think about this for a second. Yeah, okay, I have API gateway. So here inside of Acme, we don't need this Acme Prod anymore. So I'm inside of Acme serverless API gateway. Here I have configuration file which I want to use. I pass a bunch of parameters, bunch of dependencies. So it's quite cool. I created HTTP API gateway, and it's actually my awesome HTTP API gateway. And what I want to do now is that I see that this module, which I have API gateway here, actually is missing some output, for example. Well, yeah, sometimes we miss some output. So what I can do is that, of course, I can go to this module source, which is on repositories somewhere. I have it, of course, locally here. So this is source code of the module. So imagine that I see this in my GitHub in the browser, and I see that, oh no, that's too bad, there is something missing in this module, or I want to add some output, or even I want to add new missing functionality. because I see that something is not implemented and there is some bug, so I need to fix it. So what you can do here is that you can actually extend your Terraform project. If I go to this Terragrunt HCL project, so here I'm using Terragrunt, and what I want to add new output. So the way how to do this is that you simply have to understand how Terragrunt works. Terragrunt takes source code of that module and place it into temporary folder here. So then this one is exactly the same source as I just showed. So this is source of API Gateway module. There are all these outputs TF and main TF and so on. So what I need to do is that I need to now add another file here, and it's kind of important to keep this file name unique, so that my module is not, or my Terraform file which I want to add is not overriding the one which comes with the module. So that's why there has to be some convention. I often add underline to highlight that this is private file, so it doesn't belong to the module itself, but it still be included by Terraform. So I say it like extra TF. So I say extra TF, and this is where I want to add my my magic. So I said that I'm missing some output. Well, I don't know actually which kind of output I can be missing, but let's pretend that I want to output API version. Okay, well, API version is a bit strange. Let's use name. So here I don't see name returned in output, so that's the right way to do. I want to output that one. So what I have to do here is that inside of my file, which is outside of the module, I just say name, and what I want there is var.name. So obviously your editor will complain and will tell that, hey, there is no name, what are you going to output? Believe me, I know what I'm doing, so take it easy. Now we are outputting name as well, and if I go to terminal, and if I go to Terragrunt reference architecture, Acme serverless API gateway, and then I call Terragrunt init. So what I do now is that I say, hey, do what is necessary. So Terragrunt is invoking a parent file, and it's complaining about regional 0, of course, because this was bad example of doing some crazy things, because they are not supposed to be here. I mean, you can use optional, that's great, but just don't put it like this. So now I'm waiting a little bit, and it's calling some other scripts here and there, and it has been initialized. So what does initialize mean? Initialize mean that source code of the module was combined with this extra TF file which I just created. And as you can see in this scope, var.name actually makes sense, because it is declared somewhere here, which is great. So what I did right now is that I extended Terragrunt, and now if I run apply or if I run refresh, it doesn't matter if I want to update just outputs. So I run Terragrunt apply, wait for another time, drink coffee, because coffee is never a problem. Now it says that a lot of things will be created. Well, that's because I destroyed my API gateway since last time. Let's do this, and now I see my name as an output. So this name comes from my Terraform file, not from Terragrunt HCL file. So this way you can actually do a lot of things when you see, let's say, your module does everything what you want except one little thing, and then you add this one little thing and you're good to go. So think about this as let's say in VPC module, when you connect in VPC to transit gateway, some resources are not created, and you think like, oh no, that's too bad, I need to fork it and I need to do something. Well, you can fork it, of course, but the alternative way, which I highly recommend to do, is that in this extra configuration file in Terraform, you actually figure out what you would like to send in your pull request. So literally, this kind of change contain what kind of extra resources you want to do or you want to create. So let's say you are creating some S3 bucket and whatever else. Like really, it's up to you what you want to do here. And then when you test it, then you run this code and you actually have your job done and you're happy with it. So now you have to be a good citizen and you have to open pull request, and this pull request will literally contain everything what you have in this file. Maybe a little bit better structured. So yeah, that's really the best pattern which I can imagine when it comes to extending Terragrunt modules with Terraform. And another case for that one is actually, I'm looking on my notes, and my notes says workaround for passing providers. Yes, that's actually related to one of the next issue. Well, I have about 20 issues left and we are just on issue number 3. I probably need to hurry up, because last time it was a little bit too long. So think about this as you have full access to all configurations which you have inside of your module, plus all of your backend configuration, plus all of your provider configuration. So that's pretty much all what you have. And imagine that in this case, if you want to expand it, let's say you want to instantiate another provider. Now we already know that there is testing provider, right? So we can write something like, what is it, provider testing or test. I don't know if there is such test provider. And then we provide some configuration to it. And then we are expanding our module with some other provider. Or in more practical terms, unless we have very good understanding of what we are testing, we can think about this as a way how to tell Terragrunt to do, let's say, VPC peering between two different AWS resources, or the transit gateway connection with VPCs, or Route 53. So everything where you typically would have different aliases or different configuration for your providers. Or if you want to do, let's say you use AWS provider here for everything, but you suddenly want to do VPN to Google, for example. That's place for you to add this provider, and it will be propagated to the module where you can actually use it. Also, this is a good place to do last-minute hacks, but don't listen to me. Like as the best example, in the past we used to use this functionality to override modules content. So literally what I can do is that I can create main.tf file, and I know that this main.tf file would override the one which is inside of module. It's kind of crazy, right? So you can put your file and override it the one which you are willing to use. In Terraform there is function called, or not function, there is feature called override. I don't know anyone who has been using it in production or for anything real, but yeah, this is kind of Terragrunt way of overriding. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Use module. Well, this one I don't even understand what I wrote as a note, so let's skip it. There are still 10 other items left. So TF-vars, yeah, right, pattern, which I kind of like to reference. As I said earlier, if you would have file Terragrunt or Terraform, sorry, TF-vars, that file, as you know, contains all static information. So that file will not have any notion of any resources. That's because this file is executed way too early in the process, and Terraform actually rely on that file to do pretty much everything. So it's like if you look into the process of how Terraform executes under the hood, you will see that providers configuration, backend configuration, these kind of things does not have a way to contain dynamic information because they executed way too early. The same with Terraform TFRs file, or any other TFRs file for that matter. They are too static. But inputs in Terragrunt, they support everything. So if I want, I can do, I don't know, what is it? Is there a function called random? No, there is no function called random, but well, I can make, let's say, select protocol type depending on time zone, or depending on time of the day. Like in the morning I say HTTP, in the evening I say something else. Well, do you need this creativity? Yes, you need it in many places. And there are so many different situations when you really can be very creative by writing these inputs. For example, in some cases you can generate dynamic list of integration, or dynamic maps of integrations based on outputs. For example, here I have one Lambda function, but imagine that I have a lot of Lambda functions, like, I don't know, hundreds of them, and I don't want to write this list of integrations manually. So what I can do is that I can use some expression which will literally look like for kv in, and then there will be dependency dot lambdas. So this lambdas is going to return me some outputs of function irons, for example, or outputs all these. And then inside of key I can use key. So this key will be literally get and then some URL, or post some URL, and this lambda ARN will be just value, for example. So this kind of thing you can write, and yes, it looks maybe a little bit ugly, but it's really helpful when you want to get information in very dynamic way. And remember that this information is going to be resolved in runtime. So if there are any changes inside of dependency lambdas for this matter, it will actually be able to calculate this in advance, and then it will pass them into integrations. So if your integrations are used inside of your, let's say, for each or count, which you historically couldn't use with unknown values, now it is possible because Terragrunt resolved this for you in advance and calculate it as a statically known map or list or whatever you want. I'm gonna to revert this just to be able to run it if I suddenly need. Okay, so the next thing here is depends on with modules. Well, in Terraform 0.13, as you know, we can now write depends on. I have one example not far away, somewhere in Route 53, where I think here, yes, here I do this. So I really want to make sure that zone is actually created before I can create route records for S3 bucket, for CloudFront, and so on. So that's why I really want to make sure that zones is created before. And the way how this can be done in Terraform is this feature. So we say depends on inside of modules, and this was one of the most expected feature which was announced in 0.13, and people were like, oh my god, so now we finally can do this. Well, if you would use Terragrunt, you could use this feature for, I don't know, 2-3, something like 2-3 years, because it's called dependency. It's kind of core feature of Terragrunt in first place. So here you say that only when this dependency is 100% known, then it will execute it. So there is no need even to think about depends on or trying to figure out how this will behave well, it will simply fail if lambda outputs this lambda function IRN is not there or doesn't exist. So depends on is good for Terraform users, but it was built in dependency inside of Terragrunt a long time ago. So now let's go to the complaints and limitations of Terragrunt. Some of these things which I already mentioned may sound like complaints or like limitations. Well, that's how it is. So what we have, well, the first thing is of course verbosity of output. And I'm not talking about verbosity of output in Terraform because that's live. But I'm talking about verbosity in Terragrunt itself. Last time I showed my small hack which contains grep, sed, and so on, which Terragrunt, which looks like this. It works for me on Mac, may not work for some people on Mac who are not using the same GNU sed, but in general, what this thing does is just remove a lot of things which are not interesting for people. This can be simplified in many different ways, but I simply don't care about timestamp, and then I can at least see output a little bit cleaner. But still, this output is very verbose in most cases. So this is like one thing which you have to be aware is that if you try to understand what has been created or who calls what and why, it's quite easy if you have one function or one layer and then you have one dependency to this layer and everything is just pretty much linear. But if you have a lot of functions and a lot of dependencies, for example, API gateway may have a lot of different Lambda functions here. So I may have several blocks like this. Sorry, not this one. So if I have several of these blocks, then Terragrunt output will be pretty useless, because when you see something like, sorry, where is it? When you see something like this one, or like generated file, and then some sort of file, you actually have very little overview of which layer or which folder has been called to do that. So now I have one Lambda function, that's why it's quite easy to understand that it belongs to that. So just be careful when you try to rely on output. Another limitation which is very significant to many people is an ability to pass providers from the module. So here, or not from the module, from the layer. When I look in this code now, I have API gateway and Lambda function, everything works in one account, that's why there is no need to do providers. What I want to be able to do, let's say I want to pass, like we can do this in Terraform, if I have, so this is example of Terraform code, and I have one provider here. And let's say I want to make another provider where I connect differently another, and I give alias to this one and I call it another. So what I want to do, I want to have zones use default provider, but I want records to be able to use another provider. So to do that, I just need to pass providers equal AWS and then AWS.another. So what this means is that inside of this module, Terraform will actually use AWS another alias instead of AWS, which is good, and that's what I actually wanted to do. There is no way to pass this block into any place inside of Terragrunt. So you cannot write like this because it's not actually input, it's another meta argument in Terraform. So no way to do this one. And the same way, actually, I'm just thinking now, there is no way to pass lifecycle, right? Lifecycle, which we have on resources, we cannot pass anyhow. So it's pretty impossible to pass any meta arguments through Terragrunt to Terraform. So if you want to do something like this, well, there is no way to do this in Terragrunt. The only solution for this problem, which I know, I don't use it so often, so I may be a little bit wrong on this, but the only solution which you can do this is you can put all of your logic like this when you need to have multiple providers inside of your extra Terraform configuration file, where you actually instantiate another provider, or okay, not providers, but you need to have provider, AWS, and then alias, and then let's say another, something like this. So when you have this provider available inside of this TF file, it will be available inside of your Terragrunt module. But just be careful, because you may have a little bit hard time understanding where this provider is coming from that this module is actually expecting. So yeah, it's definitely one of limitation which I remember a lot of people asked on GitHub issues, and so far there were no solution to this problem. Okay, so we'll see. Maybe things actually change. By the way, do you guys have any questions or anything unclear? Please let me know in chat. It may be not very clear, because I may skip some things, because I'm, as you can imagine, I have not been preparing to this stream, like learning Terragrunt for the first time or doing anything like that. Most of this is coming from my head right now. Like maybe something has changed in Terragrunt, which is unlikely, but still. So let me know. Another limitation is related to other meta argument which we use inside of Terraform modules from 0.13 is called for each. When I actually want to have this. Now let's look into another module which makes perfect sense for that case. It's called lambda. So in some situation, it may be a very good idea to have many of similar layers created from the same source, maybe with the same or similar type of outputs, but I need, let's say, more than one of these. So I really would like to have something like for each and then something here. There is open RFC, maybe not even open, but there was an RFC inside of Terragrunt project where we had some discussion and some participation from different community members who said like, hey, we want this for each. Well, I think it is a good idea to have, but at the same time, I don't know if it will actually be so usable, because there are so many edge cases when this can simply not work. And in addition to this, it will just increase complexity of Terragrunt. And as you know, Terragrunt is a simple wrapper on top of Terraform, right? Of course not anymore. So for each with modules is great in, or okay, maybe not great, it's far from great, but still it is available in Terraform, but it is not possible to do in Terragrunt in any way, like natively. And the way how you can do this, or how you can achieve similar behavior, is you can actually simply copy paste this lambda function or lambda folder into another folder. So make copy of this one. Yes, your configuration will be repeated, but as you remember, there is a way to use something like read Terragrunt config, and then you can actually reuse this Terragrunt configuration file, which you have in more centralized place, or you can use some other expression to not repeat the same things over and over. So there are some ways how you can do this, but still yes, you will have to repeat your code more times than you really wanted, because for each in Terraform just work as for each, no need to repeat something, no need to think about different variables and how you pass them across. So in Terraform it's a little bit better, and I think it's not going to be supported in any time in the future in Terragrunt, because it's just, I don't see how it is possible. Now circular dependencies between modules. So as you can see, I'm inside of Lambda module, and in order to create Lambda function, I need to actually specify different allowed triggers, because I want this Lambda function to be callable by an API gateway, and the API gateway depends on Lambda function because it has integrations. Okay, so obviously if I now run this code, maybe not so obviously, but we'll see. There is, yeah, of course, it's a little bit crazy. So I like to type when I'm doing something, so my code is usually in semi-working condition all the time. So this happens to me quite often when I do some research. I write in first text file, which I have. Occasionally it happened that I committed code into Terraform projects without understanding what kind of code I actually pushed there. So then people contacted me and say like, hey, I think you posted some private information there, and I said, oh yeah, that's true. Okay, so there was no variable. Let's see what I did bad here. Right, okay. Now let's remove some things. So far Terragrunt was helpful, right? It told me that, hey, Anton, you did something stupid, so please fix it. So I fix it. Now I run this one. It says output will be removed. What a shame, but okay. So from this point of view, it looks good, right? AWS API gateway does not depend on Lambda because it has been already instantiated, and there is no dependencies here. What if I now remove this one here, and I don't need actually it here because this is important block. So what I do now is that when I run Terragrunt apply, Terragrunt actually goes through declared dependencies, and it sees that Lambda depends on API gateway and vice versa. So that's what it says: API gateway, Lambda, API gateway. So I think the problem here is quite obvious, and you can imagine a lot of situations when you have this kind of challenge. There are an enormous amount of solutions which you can do, especially if you are not using someone else's modules, but you're writing your code yourself. You can simply think about these edge cases or these cases in general, and just try to write your code in a way that your code is more or less self-containing. Like if I'm talking about serverless, I would probably prefer to have one big module which I call serverless, where I put all this possible functionality into one, where you just say, hey, give me API gateway with this configuration, give me 25 Lambda functions with these configurations, and so on. Quite obviously, this module would be like one big monster. Okay, we already have serverless framework. We may have the same in Terraform. I don't like this approach by many reasons, because primarily it's very hard to decompose it and very hard to reuse it or fix it or do smaller things. So here, the solution for Lambda functions and the API gateway is slightly more complicated. So I'm using open source modules which I published, and using them with Terragrunt means that I need to introduce another sort of hack. So this hack which I introduced here, I don't have it on this project, but I can just explain how it works, is that I have intermediate intermediate layer which contains information about all things in the project. So what I do is that my Lambda function is not actually dependent on API gateway, but it's only dependent on this pre-computed layer, which contains information about API gateways, IDs, or something what Lambda function need to know. So Lambda function need to know only API execution IRN. So this kind of thing is available inside of that layer. And the same for API gateway. It does not depend on Lambda function itself, but it only depends on Lambda function IRN and IRN. Yeah, so it only depends on IRN, Lambda function IRN. So this information is fetched from so-called proxy, or I don't even remember how I call it in the real project, but yeah, that's unfortunate that I have to think about this case for this kind of situation. Okay, so let's move on. Circular dependence is sometimes hard, but if possible, then they can be solved in Terragrunt as well. Right now, I simply have to comment out this because this code is not going to work without them. Okay, and while I'm here, I want to mention this pretty strange bug, which took us rather long time to figure out. So here we are. I think it's really important to know because there will be no plans to fix it in the near future, not from Terraform, not from Terragrunt side. So here is a problem. This source path inside of the module, and I'm sure that you have this as well, has type, let me go there to Lambda function. So if I'm going to search for source path, it has type null, or type any. Why it is any? Because source path in our code actually can be very flexible. It can be string, it can be collection of different strings, or it can be even map of any or list of map of any. So there is no way to pass this kind of structure into type. Ideally, I would like to have something like that. So I want my source path to be one of these thing. It's not possible to do, so that's why we have to write any. And when I specify any there, then as far as I remember right now, the problematic part is on Terraform side, where they incorrectly convert from CLI arguments into internal representation of Terraform variables. So Terraform will simply say that, okay, if this is any, then it's not string, or it's not any of our known type, so it's gonna to be empty. That's like big bug to my mind, but I don't know why no one actually complained about it. Anyway, the solution is to say that Terragrunt, when you actually gonna to pass the source path to Terraform, please make sure that this is actually passed as a string. That's why it's using JSON encode. And you have to do this only for variables when you have type any. So as I said, if it would be anything else like type list of string or string, then it's fine. That's why not many people were actually affected by this. But in our case, when we use Terragrunt and type any, this doesn't work. Well, let me know if you know maybe some better workaround for this problem, because it just doesn't look so nice. We have everything fine, like text and booleans and other things, but here for some reason we have to do this JSON encode, which is not really elegant to my mind. Okay, and yeah, in general, this is one of this problem which you only discover when you use Terragrunt. when I used Terraform, I didn't think about this because it was pretty well tested within Terraform itself, and there are a lot of users who use Terraform, so very often they discover these problems, and in general Terraform community is able to find either workaround or fix this immediately, so it was not an issue. But with Terragrunt there are few other things like this. I really encourage you to go to Terragrunt. Where is it? Terragrunt, here is it. If you go to Terragrunt repository and if you go to issues, and when you see something like that, you can just go and search for this problem or search for error output which you have. There are a significant amount of people opening issues when they find something not working, and sometimes it's not a problem with Terragrunt itself, but at least for me as a user, it's really helpful to go there and to see what exactly is the solution or workaround, because I'm often happy with workarounds for quite a long time, because I understand that not everything can be fixed immediately, and if it will be fixed, let's say during next 2, 3, sometimes half year, well, I don't mind. So just be careful and check issues. And one issue which is really fascinating to my mind is that there is no CI which runs Terragrunt, which actually built to support Terragrunt. So the best CI which you can have right now is either your Jenkins, your shell scripts, your own something. Okay, I mean there are plenty of tools which you can use. I'm not saying that, but there is no purposely built tool for Terragrunt. We have Atlantis, where we can run something and it will understand. But Atlantis can run not just Terraform and Terragrunt. Atlantis can also run any other tool as you want. So that's really important thing to understand. That if you want to rely on some commercial product which will just take your Terragrunt code and run it through different pipelines, or tell you how things are going on, or what's going to be created, or whatever. I don't know any of this. So if you know any, please let me know, because I'm kind of curious to see what people have. And this leads to another thing. There are few alternative solutions, not to Terragrunt itself, but to the problem which we have. So what we wanted to do, like guys from Uber, they discovered this need quite a long time ago, and they say that we want to manage multiple Terraform locations through some configuration. So they have created a tool which called Astro, where you have one big configuration file with a bunch of different variables, with some interpolation, well, not interpolation, but it looks like Go template, but you have something, and then you run plan, you do something for different environments, so lots of different things you can do there. This tool was I think I first heard about it 2018 or something like this, and this tool has not been popular outside of Uber, like not at all. Like, I don't know, 5 contributors, probably all of them are located in Amsterdam, where Uber is, and yeah, I think Daniel is the main guy who was pushing it. So hi Daniel. Yeah, so if you have any need in orchestration, Terraform execution, this is one of the tools. And then there is another tool which I mentioned last time, and I think it's similar in this sense. It's called TerraSpace by Tung Nguyen. So this guy has created this framework where he highlighted it as Terraform framework. So the point of his tool is that he doesn't want to replace Terragrunt, though I think he wanted. And here he specified that, like, overall, what is his approach is that we have a lot of different commands. We have some more or less like a recommended structure how we describe our code, and then we run different generators, and they generate some files for us. And overall, for me, it looks like very much how to say programming approach. So it's not made for end users, it's made for programmers to generate, to run, to orchestrate. So it's not so not so hard to understand and learn it, but for me as a user who never used it before, it looks a little bit hard. I looked into learn more, and I read all documentation. Well, maybe not all, because he is actually updating it quite actively. And I talked to him about different features which Terragrunt has related to dependency management and dynamic TF vars. And usually the answer which this tool gives is that you can write anything you want. So there are a lot of different helpers which you can use. And you can use output, and it will do similar things as Terragrunt does. But honestly, I'm not convinced that this is actually a good strategy in long run. Not that I don't like Ruby, but I actually don't like anything what is more complicated than HCL, for that matter. So that's why I was quite happy to discover testing provided by Martin, because, well, if it's not complicated, then it has chance to survive, and maybe a community will even support it as well. So that's pretty much it. And this guy actually ran Bolt Ops, and they have developed several tools, I think all of them in Ruby. So that's why this tool was quite natural for him to write in Ruby, as far as I understand. So we'll see. I want to ask him to join me maybe during next stream or in the future, where he can actually explain how things work, or how TerraSpace is supposed to be used. Maybe he can make some demo and answer some questions which we have. So feel free to leave comment, and we can see if, or not if, but when we can have him with us. So a last approach which is related to Terraform, and unfortunately it exists, it's called Terraform Ansible module. Yes, this one. Well, I clicked a little bit too much because I actually was researching about this for one of my customers. The thing here is that if you use already Ansible and you are very happy with the way how Ansible work, or you may even use Ansible Galaxy, and then there is some people in your organization who say like, hey, there is new tool which is called Terraform, and you say no, but we already have Ansible, so go away. And then they say like, hey, but there is Ansible module for Terraform, so now you are becoming best friends forever. That's pretty much the story how you can integrate these two tools. So you may have community general Terraform module installed, where you specify a bunch of different things in typical Ansible way, and you may expect some values returned from it. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of using Ansible for anything other than it was designed to be doing, which is configuration management. I clearly understand that it can be used for significant amount of other different things, and some of those types of works are quite good as well, which is not just configuration management, but managing infrastructure or even invoking something to manage infrastructure like this module does is a little bit too much for Ansible. So we don't need orchestrator to call Terraform in the way how Ansible does it. So I'm not actually a big fan of using this approach, but I can see that it works, and it will be working quite nicely if you have already Ansible installed. Just this comment alone here made me think like, but that's not how Terraform works. So to just run Terraform plan, use check mode. No, check mode and Terraform plan, there's two different things, and so on. So I think that's like alternative way how you can run Terraform. And I just see that Max says that this is similar to Ansible. Well, I think he was referencing a previous tool, which was TerraSpace, right? So TerraSpace, where was it? Here is it. TerraSpace is similar to Ansible. Well, I'm not sure if it is so similar to Ansible, because okay, Astra is similar to Ansible. Well, yeah, I think it's pretty accurate comparison. Yeah, TerraSpace is about generation code, and Astro, this one is about managing multiple Terraform execution in a single command. Wow, sounds scary. But yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Okay, so what we have about Terragrunt, I think that's it pretty much. I don't have any other things about Terragrunt which I want to share with you guys. And yeah, if you have other things you want to ask me, please feel free to ask. If there is nothing what you want to talk about, then I want to welcome all of you into our pretty much traditional Zoom after party. This time Zoom after party will be here. So I sent a link to all of you guys inside of YouTube chat. Please join there, and we can continue talking about random things there. Yeah, thanks everyone for attending. Bye.